Nonviolence is often seen as a grand concept, something used in political struggles, revolutions, or historical movements. But what about in our daily lives? How do we practice nonviolence in the small moments, the everyday conflicts, and especially in the most difficult, even life-threatening situations? Welcome to part 2 of our series on nonviolence. Today, we'll explore how we can apply the middle path of nonviolence in our personal lives and learn what to do in extreme situations. By looking at the wisdom of the great philosophers and leaders, we will discover how these lessons can transform not only society, but also our individual journeys. Nonviolence, or Ahimsa, is not just for times of great conflict or protest. It can be a guiding principle in our daily lives, influencing how we treat others, how we communicate, and even how we think. Let's begin by understanding how nonviolence can be practiced in small, everyday moments. The Buddha's teachings on the middle path are highly relevant here. The middle path advises us to avoid extremes, whether it's extreme indulgence or extreme denial. In everyday life, this could mean avoiding extreme reactions, whether it's yelling at someone in anger or completely shutting down during a disagreement. In moments of frustration or stress, whether it's at work, at home, or in traffic, practicing nonviolence starts with pausing. By taking a moment to reflect, we can choose to respond with patience and understanding rather than escalating the conflict. For example, think of the Buddha when he was tempted by the demon Mara while meditating under the Bodhi tree. Instead of reacting with anger or fear, the Buddha stayed calm and mindful, recognizing that the only way to conquer adversity was through peace and self-control. In our daily lives, when someone criticizes us or a misunderstanding arises, we can practice nonviolence by responding with kindness instead of anger. We may not always be able to control the actions of others, but we can control how we choose to react. One of the most important places to practice nonviolence is in our relationships, whether it's with our family, friends, or partners. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. famously spoke about the principle of agape, or unconditional love. For him, nonviolence wasn't just about avoiding physical conflict. It was about cultivating a spirit of love and understanding toward everyone, even those we disagree with. This doesn't mean we should ignore problems or avoid conflict altogether. In fact, nonviolence encourages us to address issues, but in a way that seeks to heal rather than harm. In a family setting, this could mean listening actively during disagreements, validating each other's feelings, and finding compromises without resorting to harsh words or actions. Mahatma Gandhi often said that nonviolence begins at home. Gandhi's family life was not without its conflicts, but he believed that how we treat those closest to us reflects our true commitment to nonviolence. This means practicing patience when tensions rise, choosing dialogue over arguments, and offering forgiveness instead of holding grudges. But how do we practice nonviolence in a setting like the workplace, where everyone comes from a different family setting? Conflict is inevitable in any workplace, but the way we handle it can make all the difference. Nonviolence in the workplace doesn't just mean avoiding physical altercations. It's about how we communicate, how we manage stress, and how we treat others when things don't go our way. Gandhi once said, "An eye for an eye will only make the whole world blind." This wisdom applies to workplaces too. If someone criticizes your work, the nonviolent approach would be to listen and respond constructively rather than getting defensive or retaliating. Practicing nonviolence means fostering an environment where dialogue and mutual respect are the norms. In such situations, using techniques like nonviolent communication can be extremely helpful. Nonviolent communication, as popularized by Marshall Rosenberg, encourages us to express our feelings and needs without blame or criticism. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," one might say, "I feel unheard when I'm interrupted during meetings, and I need more space to express my ideas." Now, what about when we witness social injustice, whether it's discrimination, inequality, or corruption? How do we respond without resorting to violence? Both Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi believed in the power of peaceful resistance, which is not passive, but active and courageous. In the civil rights movement, Dr. King taught his followers to respond to violence with nonviolence. Even when protesters were attacked, they did not retaliate. because they believed that violence would only perpetuate the cycle of hate. Instead, they used peaceful demonstrations, boycotts, and powerful speeches to awaken the moral conscience of a nation. Similarly, Gandhi's Salt March was an act of non-violent defiance. By marching to the sea to make salt, an act that was illegal under British law, Gandhi demonstrated the power of civil disobedience. He knew that by maintaining non-violence, the British authorities would expose their own injustice when they reacted with force. One of the most difficult questions people ask about non-violence is, what if I'm in a life-threatening situation? Shouldn't I defend myself with force? It's a valid and important question. Mahatma Gandhi once said that while non-violence is the ideal, it's better to use violence if necessary for self-defense than to pretend to be non-violent out of fear. The essence of non-violence is not about passively accepting harm, but about always seeking the most peaceful solution first. Let's consider the life of Emperor Ashoka. Before his transformation, Ashoka was a brutal ruler who caused immense suffering during the Kalinga War. But after witnessing the horrors of violence firsthand, he embraced Buddhism and became a proponent of non-violence. Ashoka didn't renounce power or governance, but he chose to rule through justice, diplomacy, and compassion instead of fear and bloodshed. In our own lives, if we are faced with danger, such as an assault or a violent confrontation, non-violence teaches us to first seek peaceful ways to de-escalate the situation. Can we talk the person down? Can we remove ourselves from the situation? But if violence is unavoidable, non-violence doesn't mean you can't protect yourself. Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. both acknowledged that self-defense might sometimes be necessary. But the key is to avoid escalation and not seek revenge. Use only the force necessary to protect yourself or others, and return to peace as soon as the danger has passed. There is another critical space where non-violence is important. We've all been in situations where conversations with family or friends turn tense, especially around topics like politics, religion, or personal beliefs. Practicing non-violence in these moments requires patience and active listening. Instead of arguing to prove you're right, focus on understanding the other person's perspective. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who fought for the rights of marginalized communities in India, used dialogue and the power of law to bring about social change. He never shied away from difficult conversations, but he approached them with intellect and empathy, knowing that lasting change comes from transforming hearts and minds, not from coercion or violence. Now that we've explored the philosophy and examples of non-violence, let's talk about how to practice it in our daily lives. Here are some practical steps. First is pause before reacting. When faced with conflict, pause and breathe before you respond. This gives you a moment to assess your emotions and choose a non-violent response. Second, use empathy. Try to see the situation from the other person's perspective. What might they be feeling? Understanding others helps reduce the urge to react with anger or frustration. Third is nonviolent communication. Focus on expressing your feelings without blame. Use I statements such as "I feel upset when," instead of accusing others. This reduces defensiveness and opens the door to peaceful dialogue. Fourth, use de-escalation techniques. If a situation is becoming heated, lower your voice. Use calm body language and invite the other person to talk. Simple phrases like, "I understand," or "let's talk about this," can help de-escalate conflicts. And the fifth step is to practice forgiveness. Non-violence is also about letting go of grudges and forgiving those who may have hurt us. Forgiveness doesn't mean accepting bad behavior, but it frees you from carrying the burden of anger. As we conclude, remember that non-violence is more than a strategy for change. It's a way of life, a daily commitment to kindness, empathy, and understanding. It's a choice we make every day, in small moments and large, to reject aggression and embrace compassion. The lessons of the Buddha, Ashoka, Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Dr. Ambedkar show us that this path is not easy, but it is transformative. They all remind us that lasting peace, whether in our hearts or in the world, begins with non-violence. The practice of non-violence starts in our personal lives, how we speak to our loved ones, how we react to challenges, and how we treat those we disagree with. It is the courage to pause in moments of conflict, the strength to choose words that heal rather than hurt, and the wisdom to see others with empathy rather than anger. By committing to this middle path, we can create more peaceful homes, workplaces, and communities. But we must also acknowledge that nonviolence is not a passive act. It's an active, deliberate choice to stand firm in our principles, even when faced with injustice or danger. It requires bravery to resist the impulse to strike back, and intelligence to find peaceful solutions in the face of threats. Whether it's standing up against discrimination, navigating a family dispute, or de-escalating a tense situation, nonviolence is a powerful tool for creating real, lasting change. By practicing nonviolence, we don't just avoid conflict, we transform it. We turn enemies into allies, anger into understanding, and division into unity. This is the true power of nonviolence. It doesn't simply prevent harm, it heals. It builds connections where there were none, and it strengthens communities that might otherwise be torn apart. As we walk this middle path together, let us remember that nonviolence is not a sign of weakness, but of profound strength. It requires us to be courageous in the face of adversity, to have faith in the power of peace, and to know that every act of nonviolence, no matter how small, contributes to a more compassionate world. The journey is not always easy, and there will be times when it feels like nonviolence is the harder road to take. But history has shown us that it is the only road that leads to true and lasting peace. It's a road walked by the greatest leaders, and now it's our turn to carry forward that legacy. So, as you go about your daily life, remember that every moment presents an opportunity to choose nonviolence. Whether it's in how you speak, how you listen, or how you act, your choices can make a difference. Together, we can build a more peaceful world, one act of kindness, one moment of understanding, and one choice of nonviolence at a time.